The first time we heard the baby monitor turn on by itself, my son had been asleep for nearly 2 hours. I remember that because my wife, Sarah, and I had finally settled into the kind of silence new parents dream about. The dishes were done. The living room lights were low. The TV was muted while some late-night movie played with captions drifting across the screen. Then the monitor on the coffee table crackled so sharply that both of us jumped. At first, I thought it was interference. The screen lit up with that cold green night vision, showing Owen asleep in his crib, one arm stretched through the bars, his stuffed rabbit on the floor beside him. Nothing looked wrong. No movement, no sound except the steady hiss of the room. Then, underneath the static, I heard breathing. Not a baby's breathing. This was slower, deeper. Close enough to the microphone that it felt like someone had leaned directly over the camera. Sarah muted the TV all the way. We stared at the screen and listened. The breathing stopped. Then came 3 faint taps. Not on the crib, not on the wall, on the monitor itself. Or at least, that's what it sounded like. 3 careful little knocks, like somebody testing whether the device was live. I was already on my feet before Sarah said my name. I went upstairs half expecting to find the camera dangling loose from the shelf. Instead, his room was exactly the way the monitor had shown it. Quiet, dark, still. He was asleep. The window was locked, closet shut. Under the bed, empty. I checked the hallway. Every room upstairs, then the first floor again. Doors locked, alarm armed, nothing. When I came back down, Sarah asked me the question that made it all feel worse. If there was nobody there, then what was breathing? I told her it was probably feedback. We both knew I didn't believe that. The next morning, I reset the unit and mounted the camera a little higher on the nursery wall. For 3 nights, the monitor behaved normally. On the 4th night, the voice came through. It happened at 1:14 in the morning. I know because I woke up on the couch to the sound of whispering and saw the time glowing on the cable box. At first, I thought Sarah was awake somewhere downstairs talking on the phone. Then I realized the whispering was coming from the monitor. I picked it up and felt every hair on my arm stand up. The screen showed Owen sleeping on his stomach, face turned toward the wall, in the corner near the rocking chair. The night vision made the shadows look thick and grainy. The whispering was too quiet to make out at first. I turned the volume higher and pressed the speaker to my ear. Someone was saying my son's name. Not loudly, not urgently, just repeating it in a soft, patient voice, like they were trying to wake him without startling him. Owen, Owen, Owen. I nearly dropped the monitor. Sarah came running from upstairs because she thought something had happened to me. The second she heard it, her face changed in a way I still think about. A stranger should never know a sleeping child's name in that tone. We ran upstairs together. I shoved open the nursery door so hard it hit the wall. Owen jerked awake and started crying immediately. The room was empty. The rocking chair was still. Closet shut. Window locked. No one behind the curtains. No one in the hall. No one anywhere. But one thing was different. The stuffed rabbit was back inside the crib. Sarah noticed it first. She grabbed Owen and backed into the hall, holding him so tightly he screamed. I just stared at the rabbit sitting near his feet. I knew for a fact it had been on the floor since bedtime because I had stepped over it when I kissed him goodnight. That was the first night Sarah said we should call the police. I actually did call, though I already knew how it would sound. A patrol car came out. 2 officers walked through the house, checked the doors and windows, and asked whether anyone else had access to the property. They were polite, but I could tell they thought we were sleep-deprived parents spooking ourselves. One of them suggested that some monitors could be hacked. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because if someone had hacked the monitor, then someone had still said my son's name, and that didn't explain the rabbit. The next day, I took off work and checked everything in the nursery inch by inch. I inspected the vent, opened the attic hatch in the hallway, examined the window latches, even unscrewed the wall outlet covers because my thinking had stopped being rational. Then I found the second camera. It was taped to the underside of the changing table. Small, black, cheap-looking. Not our brand. The lens was aimed directly at the crib. My mouth actually went dry. For a second I couldn't move. I just crouched there staring at it. When I pulled it loose, there was dust around the tape line, which meant it hadn't been placed there that night. Sarah was at her mother's with Owen when I found it. I called her and told her not to come home. The police took things seriously after that. Different tone, different questions. They dusted the nursery, checked the attic, searched the crawl space, walked the perimeter of the house. One detective asked whether anything else in the room had ever been moved. I told him about the rabbit. He didn't laugh. He just wrote it down. What they found in the attic made us leave the house before sunset. There was a section above Owen's room where the insulation had been flattened into a narrow path. Near the vent opening, somebody had placed a folded blanket and an empty water bottle. There were wrappers, cigarette butts in a jar, and a small notepad with times written on it in cramped pencil. 9:10 lights out. 11:47 crying stopped. 1:14 voice test. 2:03 mother entered. 2:05 father entered. Under that was one final line. Try monitor again. I read that once, handed it back, and threw up in the driveway. We stayed in a hotel for 2 weeks, then with Sarah's mother after that. The police believed whoever had been in our attic was gone by the time we found the camera, but nobody ever arrested anyone. No useful fingerprints, no clear footprints outside, no neighbor had seen a stranger. We sold the house 6 months later. Owen is 7 now. He sleeps with his bedroom door open and a nightlight shaped like a moon plugged into the wall. He doesn't remember any of it. Sarah says that's a blessing. I agree, but there are nights when I stand outside his room longer than I need to, listening to the silence, making sure it's really silence. A year after we moved, a package showed up at our new address with no return name. Inside was Owen's stuffed rabbit. Not one like it, the same one. There was dirt on one ear from where it had landed outside the crib that first night. The left button eye was slightly loose because he used to chew on it when he was teething. Sarah saw it and started shaking so hard she had to sit down on the kitchen floor. The police took the box. No prints, no footage, no explanation for how anyone got our address. That was 3 years ago. We have never used another baby monitor, and sometimes very late at night when the house is quiet and every room is dark, I still wake up convinced I've heard soft breathing through static, followed by 3 careful taps, as if someone is still checking to see whether we're listening again. By the time we decided to stop using the baby monitor, it was already too late. It started the week after my daughter turned 8 months old. Up until then, the monitor had been one of those things we barely thought about. We bought a decent video unit, mounted the camera above the crib, and let it run every night because it made us feel like responsible parents. That was all it was supposed to do. Show us when Emma rolled over, cried, or kicked her blanket off. Nothing more. The first strange thing wasn't dramatic enough to scare us. It was just odd. My wife, Nina, was in the kitchen warming a bottle while I was sitting in bed with the monitor balanced on my knee. Emma had gone down maybe 20 minutes earlier. She was asleep on her side, one tiny fist tucked under her chin. I remember smiling because she looked so peaceful. Then, without warning, the camera angle shifted. Not a glitch, not static. The picture physically moved, as if somebody had reached up and tilted the camera a few inches to the left. I sat there staring at it, waiting for the image to correct itself. It didn't. Instead of the crib being centered, now half the frame showed the corner of the room near the dresser. When Nina came back in, I asked if she had gone into the nursery. She said no. I told her the camera moved by itself. She looked at me for 2 seconds and said the mount was probably loose. That made sense. It even sounded comforting. So I went in, tightened the bracket, kissed Emma's forehead, and came back to bed, feeling slightly embarrassed that it had bothered me. The next night, it happened again. This time, we were both watching. Emma had been coughing a little. So Nina wanted to keep the monitor volume higher than usual. We were downstairs on the couch when the screen flickered once and the camera slowly shifted downward. Not a sudden jerk, a slow, deliberate angle change until the crib slipped almost completely out of frame. We both froze. I muted the television. On the monitor, the room was now mostly floor. There was a long silence, and then the picture lifted back up. Not all the way, just enough for us to see the crib again. Nina whispered, "Go upstairs." I did, fast, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The nursery door was partly open because we never latched it all the way. Inside, Emma was asleep. The camera was pointed exactly where it was supposed to be. Firm on the mount, not loose at all. I checked the closet, under the crib, behind the curtains. Even though the room was too small for any of that to make sense, there was nobody there. From the hall, Nina called up asking if Emma was okay. I told her yes, but my voice came out thin and uncertain. Neither of us slept much that night. The third night was when things crossed the line from unsettling to wrong. Around 2 a.m., the monitor made a soft chime. I woke up first and saw a warning on the screen. Movement detected. That by itself wasn't unusual. Sometimes the system picked up shadows from passing headlights, but there were no cars on our street at that hour. We lived at the end of a dead road with nothing beyond us except trees and a drainage ditch. I picked up the monitor and saw Emma sitting up in her crib. That part wasn't strange either. She did that sometimes after waking, just sitting there quietly instead of crying. What made my stomach tighten was the fact that she wasn't looking toward the camera. She was looking at the doorway. At first, I couldn't tell why that bothered me so much. Then I realized the nursery door, which we had closed almost all the way, was now standing open much wider than it had been when we put her down. Nina leaned over my shoulder and said, "Did you leave it like that?" "No." On the screen, Emma kept staring into the doorway. She didn't make a sound. She didn't fuss or rub her eyes. She just sat there, very still, like she was waiting for someone she recognized. Then she lifted one hand, a tiny little wave, not toward the camera, toward the dark space just beyond the door. Nina grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. I was already moving when I got to the nursery. The hall was empty. The room was empty. Emma was standing in the crib holding the rail, looking around like she'd just lost track of something. The door moved slightly as I entered, still swinging from recent motion. I searched the house with a baseball bat while Nina held Emma in the kitchen. I checked every lock and every window. The back door was still deadbolted. The front chain was on. Nothing looked forced. Nothing missing. No footprints outside, at least none I could make out in the dark. The next day, I installed 2 more cameras, one in the hallway and one covering the back entrance. I changed the Wi-Fi password, reset the monitor, updated every device in the house, and even called the manufacturer. They told me interference or unauthorized access was possible if the original settings hadn't been changed from default. I felt sick hearing that because I honestly couldn't remember whether I had ever changed them. So I did everything. New passwords, 2-factor authentication, firmware updates, stronger network settings, all of it. For 5 nights, nothing happened. Then Nina saw the hand. I wasn't home. I had picked up a late shift because money was tight, and she texted me just after midnight asking if I could call. When I did, she answered in a whisper so strained I barely recognized her voice. "Don't hang up," she said. "Stay on the phone." I asked what was wrong. She didn't answer directly. She just said, "I'm looking at the monitor." I told her to tell me what she saw. For a second, there was only breathing. Then she said, "There's a hand coming through the crib bars." I thought she was panicking or seeing shadows. I almost said that. Then I heard Emma start crying in the background of the call and Nina make a sound that wasn't quite a scream, more like the breathless noise people make right before one. "It touched her blanket," she said. I was out the door before the call ended. By the time I got home, every light in the house was on. Nina was in the driveway holding Emma barefoot, shaking so violently she could barely get words out. I took them to the car, locked the doors, then went inside with the bat and the hallway camera feed open on my phone. Nothing. No one in the nursery, no one in the hall, no broken window, no open door. But the blanket in Emma's crib was folded, not tossed, not bunched, folded into a neat square at the foot of the mattress. Nina swore she had left it draped loosely over Emma's legs. I believed her. The police came again. More serious this time because we had footage. Or at least we thought we did. The nursery feed showed Emma asleep, then shifting in her crib. At 12:11, something pale appeared between the slats near the lower right corner of the frame. It did look like fingers. Long, colorless fingers curling inward against the mattress. The image glitched for half a second, and then the shape was gone. The hallway camera, which should have shown anyone entering the room, captured nothing. One officer suggested there might be a reflection issue. Another asked whether the crib had any mobile pieces or toys attached to the side. It was obvious they wanted a normal explanation. I wanted one too, but there wasn't one that matched what Nina had seen. What changed everything was the crawl space. Our house was old, built on a raised foundation with a narrow access door outside. During the search, one of the officers noticed the latch had fresh scrape marks on it. We almost never went near that side of the house. The grass there grew high because it stayed in shade. When they pried the hatch open, a sour, damp smell came out so strong one of them actually recoiled. There was somebody living under the house. Not comfortably, not for long, maybe, but long enough. They found blankets, food wrappers, 2 empty bottles, a flashlight, and a milk crate with things stacked inside it. Tools, a phone charger, a pocket knife, a child's hair clip that didn't belong to Emma. And on top of everything else, placed with almost careful neatness, was the removable parent unit dock from an older model baby monitor. The detective later explained what he thought had happened. The person under the house may have been using an old device to interfere with or connect to ours, possibly after learning the frequency or exploiting weak security. He said they might also have found a way inside when the previous owners lived there and kept returning because the crawl space gave them cover. I only half listened because all I could think about was the angle of our daughter's room relative to the floorboards beneath it. Someone had been under her, listening, watching, possibly for days, maybe longer. We moved out within a month before the lease even ended. Most of our things went into storage because Nina didn't want half the furniture after that. She said the whole house felt contaminated. I knew exactly what she meant. The police never caught anyone. There were traces, partial prints, fibers, signs of repeated entry, but nothing that led to a name. The landlord admitted, after pressure, that a tenant 2 years earlier had complained about hearing movement below the bedroom at night. He'd ignored it, assuming it was an animal. Emma is 5 now, happy, loud, fearless in the daylight. At night, she still asks for the closet door to stay open a crack. We have never told her why. I wish that was the end of it. About 6 months after we moved, Nina was cleaning out a box of things we hadn't unpacked yet when she found a small memory card tucked inside one of Emma's baby books. No label, no case, just the card. I almost threw it away. Then I noticed it was the same type used in our old monitor. We brought it to the police. They copied it first, then showed us a few stills instead of the full files. Most were static-filled, badly corrupted images from inside the nursery at night. Shots of the crib, the rocking chair, the dresser. Some were clearly taken from too low to be from our mounted camera, more like from floor level. The last image was the one that stayed with me. Emma was asleep in her crib, facing the wall, and in the gap between the bars, very close to her face, someone had positioned a hand as if waiting for her to wake up and take it. The first time the baby monitor showed someone standing over my son, I convinced myself it was me. That sounds stupid now, but when you're running on 3 hours of broken sleep every night, your brain will grab the least terrifying explanation and hold on to it until it breaks in your hands. My son Caleb was 6 months old then. My wife had gone to stay with her sister for a few days after surgery, so for the first time since he was born, it was just me handling nights alone. I was exhausted, clumsy, and constantly second-guessing whether I'd remembered to sterilize a bottle or latch the crib rail or turn the sound up on the monitor. So when I fell asleep on the couch and woke at 2:18 a.m. to find the monitor screen already on, showing a tall, dark figure bent over Caleb's crib, my first thought wasn't intruder. My first thought was, I must have gone upstairs and forgotten. I grabbed the monitor, still half asleep, trying to piece together a memory that wasn't there. The figure on the screen was just a black shape in night vision. Head lowered, shoulders narrow, one arm inside the crib. Caleb wasn't crying. He was lying still under his blanket. Then the figure turned slightly toward the camera. I froze. The face was too dark to make out, but it wasn't mine. The build wasn't mine either. Taller, thinner. A strange stiffness in the shoulders, like whoever it was had been standing there for a while without moving. I dropped the monitor on the couch and ran upstairs so fast I hit the wall at the landing. Caleb's room was open a crack. I shoved the door inward and flipped on the light. Nobody. The crib was empty for one blind, terrifying second, and then I saw him. Caleb was still there, pressed all the way into the corner nearest the wall, like someone had slid him down from the middle of the mattress to make space. I snatched him up so fast he woke crying. There was nobody in the room. Closet empty, window locked, nothing under the crib, nothing in the hall. The whole second floor was silent except for Caleb screaming in my arms and my own breathing going ragged. When I went back downstairs, the monitor screen had gone dark. The next morning, I told myself the image had lagged. Maybe I'd checked on him and forgotten. Maybe I'd picked him up and set him back down crooked. Maybe the night vision had stretched my shadow into something it wasn't. Every explanation sounded thin, but I needed one. That night, I moved the camera to a different shelf and aimed it lower. At 12:47, the monitor made a soft clicking sound. I was awake this time. Caleb had just fallen asleep after a bottle, and I was sitting at the kitchen table staring straight at the screen when the picture twitched once. It didn't cut out. It just jumped, like a hand had tapped the camera housing. Caleb was visible in the crib, sleeping on his back. The rocking chair in the corner, the changing table, the strip of floor by the door. Then a voice came through. Not loud, not distorted enough to be electronic. Just a low voice close to the monitor microphone saying one sentence so calmly that it took a second for the meaning to land. "He's awake more than she said." I didn't move. I think part of me stopped functioning right then because the sentence was so specific, so casual, like I'd accidentally tuned into the middle of somebody else's conversation. Then the screen trembled again, and Caleb stirred. I ran upstairs with the phone already in my hand, calling 911. No one was there when officers arrived. They searched the house, the yard, the garage, every possible entry point. Nothing forced, no footprints worth tracking. One officer asked whether any previous owner or tenant might still have access. Another asked if the monitor connected to Wi-Fi. It did. He gave me a look that tried to be reassuring and failed. He said somebody might have hacked it. I asked how a hacked monitor moved my son. He didn't answer that directly. My wife came home the next day against her sister's advice because I sounded so bad on the phone she thought someone had died. I didn't want Caleb in that house without both of us there. When I told her about the voice, she went completely still and asked me to repeat it word for word. When I did, she sat down slowly at the dining table and pressed both hands over her mouth. A few weeks before Caleb was born, we had hired a local woman named Diane to help set up the nursery while we were both working late. Just small stuff. Folding clothes, assembling storage bins, organizing gifts. She'd only been in the house twice. Nice enough. Mid-50s. Talked too much. Loved babies. My wife had mentioned once casually that Caleb woke often and never stayed asleep long. He's awake more than she said. I watched the blood drain out of my wife's face as she realized it too. We called the police back and gave them Diane's name. They checked her background. Nothing violent, nothing obvious. She denied ever returning to the house and seemed genuinely offended we'd even asked. The detective told us not to fixate on one theory too soon, so we tried not to. Instead, I bought new locks, sensors for every door and window, and a second camera for the hallway outside Caleb's room. We kept lights on at night. I changed all passwords. We even bought a different monitor system and unplugged the old one completely. For 4 nights, nothing happened. On the 5th night, Caleb started laughing. It was 3 a.m. We were asleep in our room when the new monitor lit up with movement. I looked down expecting to see him fussing or rolling. Instead, he was sitting up in the crib in the dark, facing the corner of the room by the window, laughing softly like someone was making faces at him. No one was visible. My wife sat up beside me and saw it too. Caleb reached both arms out into the darkness, that eager little gesture babies make when they want to be picked up. Then he paused, head tilted, listening, and smiled wider. My wife whispered, "No." That one word hit me harder than if she'd screamed. I grabbed the bat we kept beside the bed and went into the nursery while she called 911 again. Nothing there, nothing near the window, nothing behind the curtain. Caleb burst into tears the second I picked him up, twisting to look back over my shoulder at the empty corner like he didn't understand why whoever had been there was gone. The police found something that night. Not in the nursery, in the basement. We barely used it. It was unfinished, low ceiling, concrete walls, one bare bulb, mostly storage and old paint cans. There was a crawl access at the far side where the foundation widened into a narrow dirt recess under the front porch. An officer noticed the padlock on the inner gate had been cut cleanly and then placed back through the latch so it still looked locked from a distance. Behind that gate was a nest, blankets, food wrappers, a thermos, baby wipes, a flashlight, and pinned to a support beam with black tape, 6 printed photos of Caleb. Not downloaded screenshots, physical photographs, different angles, through the nursery window, through the monitor feed. One from the upstairs hallway looking into his room while I stood at the crib with my back turned. My wife saw them and started screaming so hard the detective had to walk her outside. I stayed because I couldn't stop staring at the last photo. It had been taken from inside Caleb's room, close enough to the crib that I could see the threads in his blanket. There was a thumb visible in the lower corner holding the camera. The police went from cautious to urgent after that. They processed everything, searched the property line, talked to neighbors, pulled whatever street footage they could find. What they pieced together over the next week was worse than anything I'd imagined. Whoever had been using the crawl space hadn't just been entering from outside. They had a way into the house through an old coal chute access that had been sealed badly years earlier behind basement shelving. Tight fit, but possible. Possible for someone thin enough, careful enough, patient enough. They believed the person came in mostly at night, listened through the monitor first, then moved only when the house was quiet enough. We left the house that same afternoon and never slept there again. A month later, they arrested Diane, not because of the monitor, not because of the basement, because a neighbor across the street finally remembered seeing her parked down the block late one night in a car she'd borrowed from her brother. Once police got a warrant, they found copies of our Wi-Fi password written in one of her notebooks, along with details about Caleb's feeding times, sleep pattern, and a list of comments my wife had apparently made in casual conversation while Diane helped set up the nursery. But the part that still gets to me is what else they found in that notebook. Not plans to hurt him, not even plans to take him. Just pages and pages describing him as if he already belonged to her. Notes about how I held him wrong when he cried, how my wife dressed him too warmly, how his room should have been arranged, what lullaby worked best, when he smiled, how alert he was, how beautiful he looked when he slept. Like she had been auditioning herself for a life she'd already decided was hers. She took a plea deal. We were told she'd likely spend years in a psychiatric facility before any release was considered. People said that should make us feel better. It didn't, because prison time doesn't erase what was real. For months after we moved, Caleb would wake up in the middle of the night and stare toward his bedroom door with this bright, expectant look on his face, as if he thought someone was about to come in and stand over him again. He grew out of it eventually. I didn't. He's 9 now. There are no baby monitors in our house, no cameras inside bedrooms, no nursery furniture left. But every once in a while, usually when I'm up late and the place is quiet, I catch myself checking dark corners the way I used to check that screen. And the thing that stays with me most isn't the voice or the photos or even the image of that figure bent over the crib. It's the way Caleb laughed in the dark before we knew for certain there had really been someone there all along.